Hi guys, it's Mrs. Lovelace, and this week I will be teaching you social studies. Last week, Mrs. Hayes talked about goods and services, so let's go ahead and review that. Goods are objects that you buy to use or to keep, and some examples of goods would be food, paper products, laundry detergent, and clothes. Services are jobs that you pay someone else to do for you, such as walking your dog, mowing the yard, cutting your hair, and cleaning your house. Our objective for this week is to describe ways families meet basic needs. Remember that needs are something you must have to live, such as water, food, clothing, and shelter. We're going to talk about the different ways that families can get food. This is actually a picture of Mrs. Hayes's garden, and she planted cucumbers, okra, and tomatoes, as well as basil and cilantro. So one way that Mrs. Hayes is providing for her family is by growing vegetables and herbs. Another way to provide food would be if there were a working adult in your house. You could use that income to pay for food at Chick-fil-A, get groceries at H-E-B, or get burgers at Fuddruckers. Another way to get food would be to trade. We talked about Mrs. Hayes and her garden, but what you may not know is that Mr. Shank is really good at baking. So maybe Mrs. Hayes could trade her cucumbers for a dozen of Mr. Shank's cookies. Now we're going to discuss ways that families can provide clothing. One way to provide clothing would be to make your own clothes. Another way that clothing can be provided is if there were a working adult in your house that gets an income. They can then use that income to shop at my favorite place, Target, or a children's store called the Children's Place, or at Walmart. Another way that you can get clothing would be to trade with a friend, or if you have a sibling, maybe the sibling can pass you the clothing that they've worn before, or if you've taken care of your clothing and you've grown out of it, you can pass it to your little brother or to your little sister. And the last thing that we're going to discuss is shelter. One way that families can provide shelter would be by building a house. Another way that shelter is provided is by sharing a house with grandparents, or perhaps living with your aunt and your uncle, as well as your cousins. Another way to provide shelter would be to have a job, and then you earn income from that job, and that income can go towards paying rent or paying a mortgage. All right, boys and girls, your assignment for this week is to complete the needs graphic organizer found on the learning board. And what you're going to do is write and illustrate a need, and also how that need is obtained. How are those needs being met? All right, boys and girls, I'll see you next week. Take care.